Hey guys, so I had a chance to play a little bit of the full game for Tom Clancy's The Division 2. I played very little of the first game, so I only had the experience from the open beta to give me any impression of what the full game might be for this one. After actually playing the beta and now the full game, I'm happy to say that it's an enjoyable experience and a lot of fun, with a few exceptions. It's definitely not perfect, and I think there are a few things that should be talked about, not just with respect to new players, but an overall experience to anyone who's playing the game. But even with that in mind, Division 2 is turning out to be an interesting game that I did not expect to enjoy as much as I do. That being said, here are a few of my impressions for Tom Clancy's The Division 2's early game. After playing the beta, I knew this would be an issue right off the bat. Having character customization randomized was almost a red light for me. If you're going to have a game that has a lot to do with making your character look unique, or you may have to spend a lot of time looking at, there should be an emphasis on how many options the player actually has for creation. I think this was what immediately struck me as soon as I started creating my character in the full game. Don't get me wrong, there are some nice combinations of options for the character creator, from tattoos on the neck, arms, and legs, to the color options for hair and scars on the face. There's a good amount of options, but it does feel limited. Apparently, you're given a lot more options than the first game, but as I said, I didn't play much of the first game, so I don't have the ability to compare the difference between the two. I don't think the character creation is bad, I just think it needs a little more. As far as the action goes, the gunplay feels good. I like how fluid the cover system feels and how you know exactly where you're running to when moving from cover to cover. The shooting feels spot on, and a lot of the battles I got into felt like tactics were absolutely necessary to get the upper hand. I definitely enjoyed the action and did quite a bit of the first few areas alone, but this game really feels like you get the most out of it with group play. I found myself getting flanked by enemies often, which wasn't so much of an issue of the tactics, but the fact that some enemies can take a long time to drop. If I can hit an enemy who is out of cover with every bullet from the magazine and they're still standing, I think there's an issue. This is clearly designed with more people in mind so you can drop enemies faster. I love the look of this game. I mentioned this in my beta impression video, but there are so many areas of the game where I can't help but marvel at the detail. The god rays, the animals, the wreckage, internal sections, and even bases are impressive and well thought out. I do, however, have an issue with the day-night cycle. During the day, the game is great for all the reasons I've already mentioned. With the exception of internal spaces, trying to navigate through the streets at night is terrible. It's not just night, it's pitch black. I found that I was constantly running into objects and missing entrances to buildings because there was no way to see it without the sun being out. It was so bad that I joined a mission in progress during nighttime and could not find the entrance to the building that I needed to get into to join my team. I wandered around every building that was close to their location while being followed by another player that did exactly the same thing for about 10 minutes. I ended up leaving the group out of sheer frustration in hopes that the next person to join could find them better than I could. Why aren't there lights or even night vision? You'd think either of those would definitely be a thing since your agent already has a bunch of future tech, including a watch that projects and glows, and some kind of AI that's constantly talking to them. Is a flashlight or night vision goggles too much of a technical leap? If it's going to be this dark, at least give the player something to navigate through the darkness. I also know that night lighting could be fixed since I saw entire areas be lit up while I'm assuming it was the game's version of Twilight. There was still the ambiance of night with enough lighting to see everything around you. Making this the baseline for night would easily solve this issue. To me, the map feels pretty big. The map is divided into zones, and the zones have their own level recommendations and missions. You can do side missions, collect shade caches, and take over territories as well as the main story. There is also a ton of lootable objects that you can interact with when making your way from one place to another. The distance between missions is a little long and kind of starts to feel like a slog after a while. Fortunately, there is a fast travel system that goes to the main settlements, and you can even find safe houses that can work as fast travel points. With all the stuff that I mentioned in the environment and the interactions with local gangs, settlers, and wildlife, it's a nice break from just having to run through boring stretches during travel. Now, these aren't particularly issues with the game, but I did notice them while I was going through the levels. You can get some pretty good gear and even some rare pieces early on. The problem is that even though you'll be getting so many different guns and gear pieces, you'll out-level them pretty fast. Even if they're purple or yellow, the rarity ceases to matter because in a couple of levels that green item will probably be better. It also seems strange that you have access to the stash so early on in the game. Don't get me wrong, I'd rather have the option than not, but what's the point of putting anything in the stash when items become obsolete so quickly? I found out that I was getting so much gear and out-leveling it so fast that it didn't make sense to save it. So those were just a few of the things that I noticed about the early game that I thought should be recognized. Even though there were some issues and probably will be more, I think this is actually a good game. When the matchmaking would put me in with people who had some understanding of how to play the game, it was a very enjoyable experience. I haven't had the chance to try out the late game yet, but I really want to dive into it and see what else this game has to offer. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video or thought it was helpful, please like and subscribe. Thank you guys. Bye.